I've never actually heard your story of how you got into biological medicine. Everyone has their own
Sure.
unique way of that. Can you start there?
Sure. Kind of serendipitously, I guess, when I did my background in exercise physiology at the University of Calgary and then graduated with a science degree in that, and then went down, was looking at different medical systems and knew that I, at that time, wanted to work with athletic performance. So that really, in socialized medicine in Canada, wasn't attractive. I mean, there was not much you could do with it in socialization. So then, when a couple of my professors and my mom, who was a holistic nursing professor, said, "Hey, go down to naturopathic school and see what it's like in Portland." And once I was there, you got to learn medicine. So you saw medicine, and then you had some supplementation, diet, herbal stuff. But Portland was like a carnival of seminars and speakers that would come through there because we had a big school.
Yep.
And the Pacific Northwest was always an adopter of everything strange and weird as far as medicine went. So probably in my second year, that was a million years ago, maybe 28 years ago, there was some German guys that came through and they said, "Hey, we're talking about like what we do over in Germany." And I was into, bioelectric medicine and Vega machines and bioresonance therapy. And then my librarian happened to be German. And I was like, "Hey, where were those guys from?" And he's like, "Oh, they were from Germany." And before we had, tons of podcasts and stuff, we had CDs and tape courses. And so I
Yeah.
said, "Hey, why don't we spend the library's budget and bring a whole bunch of stuff in on European biological medicine?" So that's, by my second or third year, I think I had listened to every cassette tape from Thomas Rao and Conrad Wirth. There was just a ton of them that were speaking on Sanum remedies and pleomorphic and dark field microscopy and all the stuff that was very innovative and interesting at the time and kind of fit my performance model. And then I said, screw this. I'm going to get my backpack on. I got to go see these things.
Mhm.
So that was at the time where you just kind of showed up at a clinic's front door and then they would let you in because you were like someone that wanted to learn from North America. That was really attractive. And from there, I really started looking at the tech and adopting the tech and bringing it one piece back at a time. Once I graduated, I went to a innovative clinic in Kelowna, BC, with the Dr. Wagstaff, who was doing all kinds of Sanum remedies and Vega testing. And he was probably one of the only ones in Canada doing it. So I spent a year there and said, "I'm going back home to Calgary where it snows a lot." And I brought all that stuff there, built this big clinic in Canada that did a lot of biological medicine stuff, and then said, "I'm done with the snow," and then moved all that down to Arizona. So it really was like a yearning for human performance started with. And then you realize like
Yeah.
there's no difference between performance and health. People that are sick are trying to get to normal, and people that are normal are trying to get to performance. And then people that are with performance are trying to get to longevity. So it just kind of went this way. And biological medicine, just because it was probably, I still think, one of the most complicated forms of medicine. And you and I were laughing because you're like, "How do you explain this type of karate?" And you're like, "Well, it's a bunch of other karates thrown into this new karate." And everybody that can explain it like has an accent, and they're like, "You don't get it," and everybody's like, "No, I don't get it."
Yeah, it's
And
it's
so it
like
is really
explaining
like,
physics, right? It's like if you
yeah.
could do it, you're almost wrong. Those that think that they could explain it are just so far ahead of everyone else that it's
I mean,
not
you
going to
have
come
to
off
like it
that
as
easy.
it's a very tactile form of medicine. Like you've got to be there, you've got to do things. It doesn't translate virtually. It's not
Right.
like a one prescription thing. It's like
Yep.
instead of like North Americans are used to taking things and Europeans are used to doing things, right? You got to do
Yes.
things to the body way more in a physical therapy kind of like you can't talk somebody through physical therapy or take a Tylenol. That's not physical therapy. Physical therapy is what do you do to the body to make the body respond? And that's, biological medicine is more, you can take stuff, but you also have to do things and things have to happen to the body and the body has to respond. And then you get something done. And so that always resonated with me because you can't take like a bigger bicep. right? You got to do things and you got to use physiology and biology and you got to go ahead and implement things. And that's the way you get it. So North Americans are getting there. You see, like back when it wasn't cool, I was considered some weird guy that was shining lights on people and like putting, and now it's like I go on Instagram and everybody's got a red light on their face shining something through. And you're like, I told you so, right? I told you it was going to happen. And you guys said I was crazy. So I think it's evolving.
Oh, it absolutely is. And like you said, you've been around this 25 years. I've watched this since I was a little kid evolve where my father was so woo-woo and getting out of the kind of hospital setting, right? Where none of this would ever
Yeah.
be applied in the 80s and 90s. And also traveling the world and seeing what was out there and applying it and getting some skepticism from his colleagues and everyone else of what are you doing? This isn't medicine. Why
Right.
is it why do you think it is that we are so close with Europe? I mean, so much of our ancestry comes from Europe. Most of us still associate as some kind of European background. You're Italian, you're Spanish, this and that. Why is it that we've kind of neglected this massive kind of approach to medicine that started there? Is it because of the powers that let being conventional medicine put profits first, or is it just that we want convenience in our approach to healthcare?
I think when you go back and you kind of look at the history of medicine and you see like, hey, homeopathy and pharmaceuticals, like they were running a pretty good race. And because they were both taking things. I mean, we have to remember this was Europeans again, still like you still go to Europe, of course, when you show up and the doctor's office is in their house and take your clothes off. And I mean, that was your doctor,
Yeah.
right? That was your guy, right? Like your farmer that sold you the milk, that was the other guy down the street. And then this guy was your guy. And so in North America, I think like we just got used to like seeing somebody one time, right? Like you just
Mhm.
saw somebody and you went there and you gave them some vaccinations, and then that ended up being medicine. Somebody was sick, they went to you, right? And in Europe and other places, like the doctor came to the person, right? And we used to have house calls. I mean, we did all this stuff. Like people are like, well, that's so foreign to us. I'm like, what are you talking about? Now, I remember going to my family doctor, and that was my guy, right? That was my family doctor, right? Dr. Powell. I still remember the guy. And so he was my guy. And so he knew my health history. Like he was responsible for me and he understood that. And then we kind of got into probably a little bit too much of like just a transactional form of medicine, right? Where if I'm sick, I get an antibiotic. And like we got into the habit in North America of no news is good news, right? If you
Yes.
don't hear anything from your doctor, then you're healthy. And now, of course, that doesn't translate. Like people are like, well, how did I get stage 4 this if like last year I was healthy? And so I think again, like I'm an eternal optimist. I think Europe, of course, in communism, the doctor doesn't get paid if their patients are sick, right? Which is really like that's your job. If your people are sick, it means the government is paying money for these people and you didn't do your job. And so I think like we're getting back, you see concierge medicine again, which all medicine here used to be concierge because you only had your family doctor, right? So I think you're seeing that full circle go around where everybody hates medicine now because of other things that have happened in the past 5 years. So nobody trusts medicine, and so everybody's learning again, which is what they should have done, and they're starting to pick individuals and say, treat me like my mechanic treats my car. They know my car. They open up my hood. They say, Dr. Drobot, in like 6 months, you're going to need your fuel pump repaired. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And they're like, just show up in 6 months. If you want to save money, show up in 6 months. And I'm like, well, I don't want to pay for this crap right now, but I'll go another 6 months. So there was this, like, there's a reporting process and you can see it, I guess now, and you see it, Whoop bands, Oura rings, like
Yep.
Google, like Apple Watches, people are starting to track their own stuff. So they're starting to be their own doctor, which is interesting, but at least their health is becoming more of an active concept than medicine, which still looked at as you don't need us until you need us. So no news is good news. An apple a day will keep a doctor away. And you're like,
Yeah.
So we're getting back to a more active approach, like other places in the world probably take.